We are here with Susan Olsen, who is the Legislative Director of the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire. And Susan, I want to say thank you for trucking all the way up from down south to come up here to my little hamlet and visiting us here at the public library. Thank you.
I expected, we looked at the weather forecast, and I know you're a bit north of where I live, and I thought, well, rain, I can do rain, even though I'm a girl, I can do rain. And just as I came into Belmont, visibility went sort of downhill, and all of a sudden it started to snow, and the further I went, the more snow was on the road, and then I'm seeing cars in the ditch, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it's New Hampshire. But I'm delighted to be here. This library is absolutely beautiful, and what a charming room.
Yeah, we'll have to walk around and show you some of the things.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we are here for a purpose.
Yes, we are.
And you're actually wearing part of that purpose.
I am indeed.
I see the string of real pearls.
Yes.
I see the hitting button. No hitting.
No hitting.
And I see the AR-15 in pearls.
I am so proud of this. I am so proud.
So there's a reason for this. And I was there a couple of weeks ago at what's called the executive session for a New Hampshire House Committee, which is when they've had the hearings, which we were also at. All that video, all 80 video clips are up on Granite Grok.
Yeah.
So you can see who was saying what, both pro and con. So we were there to take the voting and the discussion in which the committee members got to say what they wanted. The rest of us in the public gallery said nothing. Unfortunately, there seemed to be an interaction later on, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So they were talking about a number of different bills. Two of them were what I consider anti-gun bills.
Yep.
Basically Democrat representative ignoring the idea that the word infringe even exists in the Second Amendment, and totally ignored Article 2A in the New Hampshire Constitution.
Correct.
One was putting in a waiting period for firearms and ammunition waiting periods, and the other one was a red flag law.
Yes.
So, talk to me, what happened?
Well, it was sort of shocking, and you know me, Skip, I'm a pretty jaded old hack. But what I watched that morning and into the afternoon on those bills was a surprise even to me. When you have elected officials who are elected by people who entrust them with, if not representing that particular voter's ideals, at least taking an unbiased look at law and ensuring at a minimum that it comports with the New Hampshire Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and even chapter law as it is written. And I'm amazed that those things were ignored, and people who don't have the freedom of time to go and sit in on these issues and watch as these things unfold don't know that their views may not be, if not represented in a slightly biased fashion, see their views totally thrown out the window, as well as the documents under which we're supposed to operate. And that was the case. The waiting period on guns ignores, first of all, the reason that New Hampshire implemented the state gun line after the Brady Act was passed. The incorporation of the Brady Act amendments into the state constitution were of course voluntary. The decision to become what's called a point of contact, where the state looked at some of the background checks and some went to the feds, is not uncommon. Many states did that, but New Hampshire in particular established its gun line to avoid and not incur the then federal waiting period that was originally contained in the Brady Act. So, and I have, of course, all the legislative history on that. There must be, I don't know, 140 pages of testimony and background And the reason that the gun line was adopted and is funded and run by the state police is to do that. There is no waiting period in New Hampshire because we have a local point of control for firearms purchases. So it's you ignore what's going on, you ignore reality, and you actually have the nerve, if you will, to put forward a piece of legislation and discuss it enthusiastically when the prime sponsor is in fact someone who's convicted of assault. I find some irony there that the sponsor who wants to disarm you was convicted of assault.
Which is the reason for the button. And I will bring it up. This is what Susan Olsen is alluding to, is an assault on her person by New Hampshire State Representative Katherine Rogers.
Correct.
Who, the two, to make it fairly short, the two of you were sitting at a recount.
Yes.
And she sat down next to you and at some point turned to you and just whacked you across the ear.
Well, there was a little more than that. It was, you know how recounts operate, and you've got the representatives from the Secretary of State's office sitting across from you. There's a person that represents the Democrats, and there's a person who represents the Republicans, and the electors, the representatives are either chosen by the candidate or are employed, in fact, by the Secretary of State's office to do that work. So she was there to represent the Democrat candidate, who was Andrew Hosmer, and I was there on behalf of the Republican Harold French, and it was a Senate recount, and there were 17 votes at stake, quite frankly. And you know that the people from the Secretary of State, they're charged with showing you the ballot. You, as the representative, can look, you can't touch, but it's your job to look at the ballot and see, is it spoiled, is it fine, is there some question there about what happened where a person had chosen someone. And as we were sort of starting out, the folks from the Secretary of State's office were showing the ballots, and before they almost even hit the table, Ms. Rogers would say, "Set it aside," okay, challenging the ballot. And I'm sort of, you know, looking to try to find out if there is something spoiled, because that is the right, to set aside any ballot that you find might be tainted or tampered with, and ultimately the Secretary of State comes and makes that decision. But it wasn't even, I couldn't see well enough, or I couldn't see enough to say, well, what's that about? So I asked the folks from the Secretary of State's office, would you mind to put the ballots a little more in between us, Ms. Rogers and myself, so I could get a good look at it, because I don't see what's, I'm not seeing enough of the ballot to understand the reason for the challenge. And it was at that point that she turned to me like she was going to hug me and sort of chuck me under the chin and say, well, whatever makes you happy. And as she took me by one shoulder and came around what I thought was a hug, and I'm a polite person, you know that. And instead of getting a hug, she clocks me on the side of the head with an open hand. And I'm not smart enough or quick enough to fall on the ground and go, oh my God, oh my God. I stood up. I was so shocked. I don't remember the last time I've been struck physically. And I stood up and I said loudly, I didn't realize how loud, said, if you strike me again, I'm going to have you arrested. And all of a sudden I'm looking around and the room has gone quiet.
Grok TV.